Hello, everybody. Welcome to Global Hack Week Games. Today, we're going to enjoy our time together by building a paint together game that lets anyone in the world paint simultaneously. With that, I'm going to share my screen. Here is my window. There it is. Perfect. Let me get my screen how I want it. Okay, I'll use a Global Hack Week background there. Cool. Send me a chat if you can hear me okay and you can see me okay before we get started. This is the day 2 of Global Hack Week. I hope everybody's enjoying the time so far. Hello. Thank you so much for coming to my session. Perfect. All right, so as the title suggests, we're going to be building a paint together game using JavaScript and Firebase. For the purpose of this session, we're going to build everything using vanilla JavaScript, meaning there will not be any frameworks. We are going to just use JavaScript alone with Firebase. So if you haven't heard, Firebase is a Google product. Let me just open up Google and do a quick search. Google Firebase, that's the documentation there. And if we take a look at their page, Firebase is the app development platform that helps you build and grow apps and games users love. So this is a super powerful platform. Specifically, we're going to use what's called Firebase real-time database to accomplish the real-time communications. All right, so you can see like Firebase comes with a lot more tools than just the database. It has like cloud functions. You can run performance monitoring, crash analytics, A/B testing, remote config, messaging, and more. So this is a very powerful platform that Google has. And specifically, we're going to use real-time database. This is a way for us to store and sync data in real time across the world, right? Across all the users in the world. It's going to make it super easy. And if you took a look at the session description, we're going to do everything within 50 lines of code. So we're going to write 50 lines of code. We might copy and paste some configurations here and there, but we're really only going to write about 50 lines of code to make this happen. So who's ready? Let me know in chat. All right. Before the session, I just want to introduce myself. I am Wei. I am a technical program associate at MLH Fellowship. He, him pronouns. And a fun fact is I owned almost 200 domains once. That was a very fun and expensive time of my life. Took all my brain to think of all kinds of domain names to buy and ending up wasting money on all of them. So fun times. What was the most expensive one? The most expensive one is about $800. It is how.app, how.app. I still own it today. So if anybody wants to take it off my hands, let me know, make an offer. All right. So we have a question. Okay, by the way, that was a question I answered. What do we have to do in this event? So this is kind of like a entry-level workshop, beginner-friendly workshop. You can just watch me code. You can code along, and you can enjoy the interactions. So you'll see how I think, how I find resources online, and how I approach coding up a little fun program like this. So hope it helps. All right. With that, I just want to remind everybody, please remember to check in. We definitely want you to get the points you deserve. The check-in link is on the bottom of the page here, so make sure you just type it in, hackp.ac/GHW-paint-together. All right. Welcome, everybody. We're just getting started. All right, cool. So for today's session, I am going to use a platform called Replit. This is a very cool platform that lets you code on the web. You don't have to download anything. You pick the languages you want to use, you pick the frameworks you want to use, and you can look at other people's templates, etc., and just code along, right? It's very, very easy. If you haven't gotten an account, you can just go to replit.com, sign in with your GitHub or Gmail, etc., and you'll have a free account. Cool. So since I said this session will be based on JavaScript and Firebase, vanilla JavaScript rather, we're just going to use a simple template like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So this is the most basic 3 technologies that make up the web. All right. So as you can see here, we're going to get a REPL that comes with just that. No frameworks needed. So we're going to call this paint together. And public is fine. Create. All right. Hello there. Welcome. Thank you so much for coming into my session. All right. So as you can see on the page, we have a very basic skeleton HTML page that just says hello world. We have a script.js that's pretty much empty. And we have a style sheet that pretty much is empty as well, I would say. So this is a very good starting point for any basic prototyping or application that you want to create, right? Okay, we have a newcomer. Welcome. So this event is called Paint Together with JavaScript and Firebase. It's going to be a workshop showing you how to create something using vanilla JavaScript and Firebase. This is going to be a paint together application or game where anybody in the world can open up a browser and paint together. All right. And we're going to do everything within 50 lines, hopefully. We'll see. All right. So we have our 3 basic files now, HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. So we first need to kind of think about what we're going to do here. If you think about paints, if you think about a picture, what is it made up of? It is made up of pixels, I would guess, right? Where's the link I was talking about? I will post the checking link real quick so that everybody has access and you can get your points. p.ac. Yeah, okay. Thanks very much. But I'll just post it again so people from any of our 3 streaming platforms can get access. All right, cool. Okay, so I was saying, if you think of a picture, it's really made up of pixels, right? So the first thing I want to, think like, how can I make a game where anybody in the world can just jump on and change colors of pixels on a page, right? That would be. Is the link not working? Did I spell it wrong? GHW, paint together. I think it's correct. Okay, it's not working. All right, fine. hackp.ac, JW paint together. It's not working for me either. Okay. Yeah, we can use the full link here. Somebody has shared, and let me just grab the full link as well. This is the page, by the way. Okay. That would be the checking link. All right. So can somebody tell me, anybody tell me, like, what is the best way to create like a wall of pixels? So we'll start with something small, maybe like a 10 by 10 grid of pixels, like a canvas. That's pretty interesting. Yes, you can definitely use a canvas to accomplish something like that. But I'm looking for something like that's simpler. That's kind of bread and butter for the web. What is something that gives you a grid on the web? A div, yes. Table, grids, yes. You can use CSS grids, of course. But just for fun, we're going to use a table. CSS, HTML tables. We're going to use HTML tables, okay? Just make it for fun. So we're going to just create a table real quick of 10 by 10 pixels. Before then, let's actually do it in JavaScript so that we can dynamically change the number of columns and number of rows very easily. So we'll first do a table, just create a table component or element within our body, and inside script.js, we're going to create the table. All right. So I'm just for the sake of it, I'm going to create like a startup function. I'll just call it bootstrap. And inside the bootstrap function, I'm going to create the table. And I'm going to pass in 10 by 10. All right. So this table is going to have 10 columns, 10 rows and 10 columns, right? Next, let's just define the function create table. We'll do rows, columns. To make it easier, 10 rows, 10 columns. Within here, we can set an ID here for our table. We'll just call it our ID table, just for simplicity, and we can assign that to a variable called table. So we'll use the traditional document get element by ID table. Make it easy. Next, we will want to add 10 rows and 10 columns to that table to make a 10 by 10 grid. So we can do that with the loop. We'll do a simple loop like for row equals 1, row less than or equal to rows, to the number of rows, and then we'll do we'll increment row. All right, so this is going to give us, inside this loop, this is going to give us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right? 10 rows. Similarly, we're going to do another loop. We're going to copy it for columns. Column equal to 1, column less than or equal to columns. And then we're going to increment column for each iteration. All right, with that, what are we going to do? So for each row, we're going to append a row, of course, right? So let's create a variable called row element equals to document.create element. This makes it very easy for you to create any element in HTML, right? So we're going to create a TR. So in tables, we have table. Each row is TR, and each cell is TD, which we will get to very shortly. So now for each column within that row, we're going to create a cell element. And very similarly, we're going to do something like document.create element TD. That will be the cell. each cell within that row. All right. Feel free to stop me if you have any questions whatsoever. Here it is. Ask me any questions down below. All right, let me take a look at comments here. All right, we can go ahead and continue. Okay, so now we're going to append a cell element to row. Right? So after this line, we will have 10 cells inside this first row. Next, we'll just do the same thing. We'll append the row to the table. All right. This should give us a table of 10 by 10. But now we need to call the bootstrap method on page load when the page is done loading. The DOM elements have done loading. So we can do that using an event listener on document. There are a number of ways to do it, but I'm going to stick it to the basics. We're going to call document.add event listener, DOM content loaded. And inside here, we're just going to, for now, just call the bootstrap function. All right. Why is there a red squiggly here? I do not know. So let me go ahead and save it and run. Okay, nothing happened. It appears like nothing happened, but if we toggle on developer tools and look at the log, we'll see that row.append is not a function. Okay, that means I put in the wrong variable name. It should be row element. All right, run again. And there's still nothing. Why is there nothing? If you actually take a look at the page here, let me see. Let's actually take a look at the page here. Go to body. You'll see there is a table, and there are 10 rows, and there are 10 elements within each row. So the table is there, but there's just nothing inside the table for the page to show anything. That's really easy to fix. All right, let's fix that real quick. We can fix that with CSS very easily. So we're going to first add a border. Let's just add a border around the whole table. We'll make it maybe just like a 5-pixel gray border around the table. Okay. And then within each cell, so this will select the actual cells in each row. Let's just make it 10 pixels, for example. Let's do 20 pixels. Width 20 pixel, height 20 pixel, and we'll make it a background color of, what's a good color? Pink, right? Light pink, all right? And if we hit run, now we have a grid. We have a table of 10 by 10. We have a border, and we can see every single cell is now taking 20 pixels by 20 pixels, right? With just a few lines of CSS, we're able to style it very neatly. But if you think of a picture, like there aren't really like white lines in between the pixels, right? So we should go ahead and just get rid of it. So the way we can get rid of it is using a CSS attribute called border collapse. And we just collapse the borders. And that will get rid of the pink lines. So now we have a 10 by 10 grid. Every pixel is light pink. Any questions so far? Is there anyone following? Let me know in chat. All right. So the next thing I want to do is, let's see, let's think about it. What's the next thing we want to do? if we're painting, right, anytime we drag our mouse, like if we press down on a cell, it should change color, for example. And anytime you move around your mouse while it's pressed down, the colors should change, right? So first, let's add a color picker. Let's add a color picker here. And HTML5 has, okay, you want me to open script.js real quick? I can do that. Actually, my window might be too small. Nobody told me, so let me just zoom in so that you can see better. It is. Hope that helps. Okay, cool. So you only have one gray square. That's likely because you haven't colored the cells yet. So under the cells, make sure you also have a CSS attribute called background color. And you can change it to anything you want. I can do light blue, and it's light blue. All right, perfect. All right, so we're going to use a built-in CSS or HTML5 feature called a color input. All right, so type color. We're going to just put a label here, paint color, or just color, brush color. Right, on save here, you can see that we have a black color automatically selected. Just for the ease of selecting this color input, we're going to pop on an ID, and we'll just name it color or brush color, just to make it a little bit more explicit. Why table? In place of table, just create box. Yes, we can definitely do that. We can just use a div or something and then style that. The reason I'm using table is just because there's no particular reason. I could use anything else. Thanks for that question. Okay. GitHub repo link. I don't yet have a repo, so once I finish everything, I will post a GitHub repo. All right. While we're at it, let's change the page title to Paint Together. All right, so now we have a brush color. What would be the next step, right? What would be the next step? I think the next step is like we need to hook up the event listeners. So if we hover over any of the cells, and if you're pressing down on it with your left mouse button, then the color should change to the brush color, right? So how can we do that? How can we accomplish it? So we first take a look at where we define the cells. So if you look here on line 12, we are defining the cells, right? We're defining the cell element. All right, so now let me just create an event listener. We're going to call it, what's a good name for it? On mouse enter. On mouse enter. I think that's a good one. So, right? So this is going to be an event listener that we hook up to. Hidden under face cam. Yeah, thank you for letting me know. On mouse enter cell. And here we're just going to log out the event that we get. So, and then we can attach the event very easily by using cell element dot add event listener. And I don't know what is the official name for this event, so I'm going to Google cell element at event listener. So it's event listener for mouse enter. All right, so we're going to search for that. And if we look at the MDN website or W3 schools, you can see that there's an event called mouse enter, and you can add the event listener using the syntax. So I'm just going to copy that and pop it into here. And since I've already defined a event handler, we're going to just paste that in. All right. Now, anytime we hover over any cell, you can see under console that the mouse event is being triggered. Right? Mouse event is being triggered. That is very powerful, right? So now we can take a look in here. We can say things like, are you pressing down on the left button, right? Left mouse key. How can we determine that? We can take a look at mouse event and take a look at buttons, right? Mouse event dot button or mouse event dot buttons. Okay, the buttons being pressed when the mouse event was fired. All right, so I think that would be a very good one to use. So let's just log it out. So let's do e.buttons. This will give us which buttons are being pressed when your mouse is entering this cell, right? So I'm going ahead and saving. And you can see if I'm just moving my mouse around this table, all the pixels, 0 is what's returned. But if I press down on it with my left key, you notice the value becomes 1, right? So 1 is what I'm looking for, really. So we need to determine if the mouse is pressed. The left mouse key is pressed, and we can determine that by checking e.buttons is equal to 1. So if the mouse key is pressed, then the user wants to paint that cell, right? Is onClick event a mouse event? That is a very good question. Let's go ahead and take a look at onClick. onClick. And if you take a look at onClick, it is indeed a mouse event. Another thing I just thought of, thanks for reminding me, on mouse enter, we're checking if the left button is pressed. But if you're already on this pixel and then you press the left button, the mouse enter event will not be triggered, right? Meaning like the first cell you select, it will never be highlighted. We'll fix that later. We'll just go with this for now. Okay, so can anybody tell me, so now we know we get the mouse enter event on every cell. Like how do we change colors? Like how can we change colors of the cells where the mouse is being pressed? How can we change? Here, let me change my layout real quick. That way you can see the full screen. Okay, so I'm thinking, first we need to be able to identify like which cell is which, right? Like which one is being selected or being pressed on. Element.style.color. Yeah, that's very good. In this case, let's first we need to identify like which exact cell is being hovered, right? There's not a very easy way because every single cell is sharing the same event listener, right? Okay, so we have an idea. Make a new ID selector in CSS, all right, for every cell. does the event contain a reference to the element clicked? Yes, exactly. That does. So what we're going to do is cell element equals to e.target. And this is going to give us, okay, this is going to give us the cell element. And then we can do something like cell element dot style dot. In this case, we want to do background color because color, if you just do color, it's really for the text and that's within the cell. So in this case, I'm just going to do background color equal to we now need to figure out how to retrieve the color from this input, brush color input, right? So we can select the brush color and do something simple, get element by ID, brush color dot value, right? So this is going to give us black. Okay, this is going to give us black, and let's see if it works. Save. It didn't work. Why did it not work? Okay, it did work. All right. So I just have to hold down my key and I need to press on it. Now we can paint and we can change the color to red. Beautiful. We can change the color to blue, purple-ish. Perfect. All right. And the reason I'm using the background color instead of color is because if you can see here, that's how I define the initial default color, light blue. All right. All right, cool. Well, thanks for that. Very nice art. Someone who appreciates. All right, so on refresh, everything's gone, right? I want to first I want to solve the problem of like, if I try to press down my left key, you know, the first one is never changing color, right? The first one isn't changing color unless I go back to it from another cell with the mouse already pressed down. So there's actually another event listener I can listen to called mouse down. All right. All right, so why am I using mouse down instead of click? And you can take a look at the explanation here. Click event happens after a full click, but for my purpose, I'm going to press it down and drag it around the page, right? So it's not necessarily a click. That's why I'm going to use the mouse down event instead. So it's very easy. Just like this, we can listen to both mouse enter and mouse down events. Okay, so now it works perfectly. As soon as I press down, the cell will change to black, and no, it just works. And I can drag it as normal. Perfect. All right, so we got a syntax error, unexpected token, open brackets. So this typically means that there's a syntax error inside your JavaScript. Just make sure you have a matching open or closing brackets, or you didn't, accidentally repeat those brackets too much. Hello, Malaya, welcome. All right, cool. So just to recap, we use JavaScript to create a table and all the rows and cells within 10 pixels by 10 pixels. We created an event listener that listens to both the mouse enter and mouse down events within each cell of this table. And we're applying a style color to it in the back as a background color. And this essentially gives us the ability to draw. Can I explain that thing again of being dragged and getting a color? Okay, so if you look at this event handler, that's where all the magic happens, right? We are listening to two events on every cell, right? There's mouse enter and mouse down. Mouse enter is when your mouse moves around here. Just for the sake of it, I'm going to add back the borders, make it easier to explain. All right, you can see every cell very clearly here. If I drag my mouse around, that's going to trigger the mouse enter event for each cell. Mouse down is when I press it down on one cell, and that's going to trigger the mouse down event. And within this within this event handler, I'm first checking if the left key of your mouse is being pressed. If it is, then we're changing the background color to whichever color you picked as your brush color. All right, so that's the idea. Okay, cool. Any other questions before we continue? All right, let me know in chat if you do, and I'll be happy to help you out. Okay, so next we're going to hook it up to the Firebase real-time database that we were just talking about. Can I see the first half for a second? For sure. So this is the first half where we're creating the table, creating the rows, creating the columns, cells, and attaching event handlers to each cell. Okay, so now everything's on my browser, like locally on my browser. I can't really share this with you, right? If you have this open, you're going to have your own instance of the paint. You can paint it all you want, and it's not going to sync back to me. I will never be able to see your paint. You'll never be able to see my paint. And that's where Firebase real-time database comes in. This makes it so easy. It makes it possible so that you and I will share the same database. We will see the same painting on our browsers. All right. So that's the power of Firebase. Yeah. I'm definitely going to share a GitHub repo afterwards, so don't be too worried. If you missed anything, just hang in here and we can go through this together, code it up together. All right, so the next step we're going to do is hook up the Firebase database. And as a first step, you need to go to this URL, right? Okay, someone needs the style CSS real quick. Here it is. This first part just came with the REPL. I don't think it's necessary. It doesn't really matter. But we added a few lines down here. Okay, so here's the website for Firebase. I just sent in chat. You can take a look. And all you have to do is sign in with your Google account, and you should be able to create a project. And for the purpose of our demo, we're going to name it Paint Together. Okay. Sounds good. Do I need Google Analytics? Doesn't really matter. I'm going to turn it off for now. And it's creating the project. Provisioning resources. Yeah, in the meantime, let's take another look at our brush, play around. In the end, I want to create like the MLH logo with it. Maybe you guys can help me after. All right, cool. The project is ready. Cool. So this is the dashboard of the Paint Together project, as you can see here. And I'm just going to add it to my app. So I'm going to use the real-time database. That's really what I'm going to use first. Real-time database. And I'm going to create a real-time database. Under database options, you can pick the location, doesn't really matter to me. And we're going to start in test mode. Just to make it easy, Firebase has very advanced authentication and permissioning. But for the purpose of the demo, we're just going to allow anybody to read and write to this database. If you're actually making a game, like a multiplayer game, you will want to make sure each player can only read and write things that they need to play the game. Okay, so now we have a real-time database. This is a very, very powerful database. And you will see it in just a second. Hello there, welcome. We're just working on hooking up our Firebase real-time database to our project. All right, cool. Okay, so next, I'm going to do things a little bit differently here. Instead of setting a style background color to our brush color directly, let's do it a little bit differently. Well, first, let's hook up the real-time database, and you'll see what I mean. And how do we hook it up? Let's take a look. I think there's like a documentation page here, Firebase fundamentals, guides. Let's take a look. Add Firebase to web. That's what we want to do here. Okay, step 1, create a project, register your app. We did that. Create a Firebase project. We did that. Register your app. We haven't done this yet, so let's do this. After you have a Firebase project, you can register your web app with that project. Do we need to do that? Let's take a look. Project overview page, click web. Okay, so let's go to project overview and click web. And we're going to register an app. And the app is going to be called Paint Together. Register app. Okay, so now we have 2 ways of installing Firebase SDK to the application, right? We can use a npm or script tag. But as you already know from our initial intro, we're going to use vanilla JavaScript, meaning we're not going to use any frameworks at all for creating this app. So what we're gonna do is just use a script tag and import the necessary SDKs directly. All right. So I'm not using any build tools, so we're using this option to add and use the Firebase SDK. All right, so we need to copy these scripts into the bottom of the body tag, but before you use any Firebase services. All right, for simplicity, we're just going to copy this into our JavaScript file, which is the same, all right? So we'll just copy it and paste it to the top of our JavaScript file. And one thing we do need to do is make it a script type module so that we can import the SDK using this notation. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. And we can do it by adding type equal to module as they requested. And we'll just rename the script file MJS. That is kind of the convention for any script that's imported as a module. And we can rename it. How do I rename it? I think it's on the left side here to MJS. All right, cool. Now I can refresh, and our app is back. It still works. So now we have imported our Firebase configurations, and we're initializing the app. All right, cool. So that's what we did right here. Continue to console. All right, perfect. All right, the next step then is we need to import the real-time database. So since we have imported the Firebase as a whole, we now need to import the component that's responsible for the real-time database. And there are a couple ways to do it. Let me just find it real quick. Real-time database. Nope, maybe not here. Build real-time database. Web, get started. Okay, so this is the documentation page that we will use to set up real-time database. Can you see the script link again? For sure. So all we did here is we added a type module and renamed the script to the extension MJS instead of JS, just for convention. All right, so now we're going to just follow this page real quick and import the real-time database in the Firebase console. So create a database. We already did that in test mode. We don't have to worry about anything else. Now we just need to import the SDK that's responsible for the Firebase database, right? So let's just kind of follow this convention here. Get database. We're going to copy that. We're going to put it in here. And one thing to keep in mind is this is the package URL if you're using a bundler or if you're using a package manager like npm. The full URL for Firebase database is basically this full URL, and instead Firebase app, it's Firebase database. So that is the full URL. You can actually find it at this link. But for now, I'm just going to paste it in. I'll send it in chat also. We renamed our script from script.js to MJS. That's exactly right. You don't have to rename it. It's kind of just for convention. Okay, so if we continue down our documentation, we are also adding this line, which is initializing the real-time database and getting a reference to the service with a variable named database. So let's do that. So now we have a reference to the real-time database. And here is the import, which I have added. And this is the line where we initialize the Firebase database. All right, so now we have a reference to the Firebase database. All right, looking at our application, we're hitting 550 lines. I said we're writing 50 lines. The ones that we pasted do not count. Like these do not count. In my books anyways. Okay. All right, cool. So the next thing we need to think about is like, how are we going to store all these information, like the color for each cell, within the Firebase database that we have just created, right? How can we, what can we do here? What should be the data structure? So in my mind, we can just represent this grid, this table, using an array of arrays, right? So it's going to be array of 10 items, which are rows, and array of 10 cells within each row, right? So we can easily kind of model our database that way, using the array indexes. So actually, we'll just go with row 1 to 10, column 1 to 10 under each row. So we can kind of just copy that, what we have here. That's how I would model it. So let's go ahead and hook up Firebase database. So we'll just call it initialize init Firebase database. And we're going to call this function somewhere down here. Okay. All right. Before then, let's think about this a little bit. For every for inside this event listener, we know which cell is triggering the event, right? We know which cell to change colors, right? But we don't know, what we don't know is like which row it belongs to, or which cell it belongs to, right? We just have a reference to the cell element, but we don't have an easy way to find out which row and which column it belongs to. So we're going to just make it easier on ourselves by adding some data attributes on each table TD element. Inside each cell DOM element, we can do something like cell element dot dataset dot row, and we can set row number to it. Likewise, we can do cell element dot dataset dot column. Okay. Now every cell is tagged with its row and column, and we can easily tell if it worked by doing a log. Painting row cell element dot dataset dot row, column cell element dot dataset dot column. How do I row copy so fast? You can use a shortcut that's present in many editors. On Mac OS, it's Command-Shift-Down. Oh, sorry, that's not correct. It is Option-Shift-Down to copy rows. Then you can use Command-X to delete rows. Just a quick tip there, and that's in response to this comment. Yeah, some of these shortcuts are very, very helpful. Okay, so we have this console log painting this row and this column. And if we're painting it, you can see everything's working. we know exactly which row and which cell it's painting, right? Very easy. Okay, so next we need to save this. Okay, you just joined. What did I miss? So I'll just show you what we've done so far. We're creating a paint together little game where anybody in the world can join in and paint on the browser, wherever they are, as long as they have internet. So we have created a little color selector here, along with a table that has a 10 by 10 grid representing pixels, right? Pixels on the grid. And then we are using some JavaScript to initializing the table with 10 by 10 pixels. Creating the tables, we added event listeners. So if anybody kind of drags around, it's going to highlight or color the rows, the cells that the mouse is going over. So that's what we've done so far, and we can change the color and paint it around anything you want. Now we're trying to connect it to the Firebase real-time database, so anybody in the world can share the same colors, basically. Anybody can paint together. So that's a quick recap. Hope that helps. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to save this, right? I'm going to save this information to Firebase. I'm going to save this information into Firebase, as I said, and let's look at the documentation on how to write to Firebase. And if we're looking at this documentation, I'm just going to scroll through really quickly here. You can read more about it after, but I'm going to scroll right to the sample code here, which is basic write operations. So first we need to import these three helper functions, ref and set. We already have get database, so we need to import ref and set from the Firebase database SDK. Ref and set. And we are going to do something very similar to what they have here. So we're going to set, we have our database initialized here called database. We'll just rename it to DB for simplicity. And we can set column. We'll first do row. So cell element dataset.row. Can I hold the code for each section for a minute or so? Yes. All right, so row, and we're going to copy column. All right. So basically, what we're telling Firebase real-time database is for this within this path of the database, we want to set a color. So in this case, we're going to set the color of our brush, right? So if you're new to Firebase, this might be a little bit confusing, but once I save and run this, it will be very, very easy to understand. Okay, so I'm defining this line here, and I can just drag it around. You can see we're still printing out these console logs. We're painting row 1, 1, 2, 2, and 3, 3, right? Now, if you go to the Paint Together database, this is where the magic happens. You can see that under 1, 1, we have our paintbrush color. Under 2, 2, under 3, 3, we have our paintbrush color. And I can change the color also. Let me just change it to red. This is row 1, column 10. And you can see that row 1, 10, now has the red color saved in the database. right? So now we have something going for us. But before we continue, do you have any questions? And let me just pause on each line, each code block here for this participant here. These like first 20 lines, 22 lines are basically copied from Google Docs, like the documentation for Firebase. So we're not going to count that against my 50 line limit. All right. Okay. So the next 20 or so lines, we're doing Bootstrap. We're creating table, initializing the Firebase database. All right. Create table is right here. And our event listener for mouse enter cell is right here. We're painting the row, and we're setting it in the Firebase database. And I just realized my computer is not plugged in, so let me plug that in real quick. Okay, we're good. For the thing I just showed in the database, is it JSON? Yes, exactly. So Firebase real-time database is actually a giant JSON document. If you go to this URL directly, let me see if I can just copy it. Here, I'll copy this. You will see, okay, I guess it didn't work. Copy one. Okay, it didn't work. But behind the scenes, the Firebase real-time database is indeed a big JSON document that lets you, you can kind of set, retrieve any key under this big giant JSON document. Hope that helps. Okay, so the next thing I want to do. Okay, we have another question. How does Firebase help facilitate real-time collaboration between multiple users on a painting project? Very, very good question. So the idea is that everybody will connect to the same Firebase real-time database, and anyone can go in here and anyone can paint, and whichever color or location, row, column that they paint will be reflected in this database, which will then be reflected to everybody who is painting at that time. All right, hope that helps. Can I show the HTML code too? Of course. So here is the HTML code. It's basically boilerplate code. We have a brush color with the input color. We have a table, and we have a script import. And we have a question by ZZZZ. Because we set row before column, it happens to be the parent, right? Yes, exactly. So as I showed here, row 1, column 10 is now red. And we have here row 1, column 10 is now red. How would we make the canvas bigger? I will show that in a little bit, maybe in 20 minutes or so. We'll make it bigger. All right, without further ado, let's continue. The next thing I really want to do is anytime I change the color here, for example, if I change it to blue or green, I want it to reflect on this page. But currently, it's not going to update on this page, right? It's not going to show up. So if I change this, for example, to a different color, this is green, I believe. it's still red. It's not changing to green. Why is that? And the reason being, we're only changing the color, background color of the cells within this event listener. So what we need to do then is anytime the things change inside this database, we also need to update the style sheet on this page, right? So that's what we're going to do next, which is when colors change in the database, update the styles on this page. Update styles. Here, I'll just keep it concise. When colors change in the database, we're going to update styles. And how can we do that? So if you look at the documentation here, there's a section for read data. Okay, 1 second. My dog is barking. Okay, we caught an error. Yep. All right, I hope you can check your typos. Yeah. All right, so we'll continue. Read data, listen for value events. All right, so this is basically how we're going to do it. We're going to read the data and listen for changes, meaning like anytime something changes, if anybody changes the color, we're going to update it inside our application, inside our game. So we're going to copy this code right here. Okay. And if you look at what this event handler does, the listener will receive a snapshot that contains the data at the specific location at the time of the event. So that's what we're going to do. I basically copied some sample code, but for now, we're just going to modify it. So we're going to say on value of database. Basically, anything in the database changes. Anything in any cell changes. We are going to take a snapshot of that, and we're going to apply the styles to our canvas, right? So let me just print it out and then see if this is what we're expecting. Save. On value is not defined. Okay, so that means we also need to import the onValue function from the Firebase database so we can use it. Okay, cool. So if you can see here, now we have some data coming from Firebase real-time database. It tells me that row 1, cell 1, column 1 is black. Row 1, column 10 is red, right? That's what the Firebase real-time database is telling me. However, nothing's showing up on this page. That's not good, okay? So what we need to do then is we need to add some CSS styles to make sure that whatever the database has, the colors are applied correctly to each cell. All right, so now we're going to kind of do some magic here. Let's see what is the best way to do that. So first, let's just construct all styles equal to just an empty string for now. And then what we're going to do is for each of the keys, so 1, 2, 3, these are the keys. For each of the keys, which are rows, right? Row of object.keys is how you do it in JavaScript to retrieve all the keys. Data. For each row and for each column inside that row, which is going to be object.keys, data square brackets row. And this is going to give us the value at each cell, right? So now we can kind of do a console log. Firebase real-time database, row, column, equals to the color. So the color is going to be cell color. I'll just make it more explicit. Data at row at column, right? For now, we're just going to print it out. Run. Okay, perfect. So if you look at the log messages here, we have row 1, column 1 is black. Row 1, column 10 is red. But if I come here and I change this, right, changed, you will see the new log messages showed up, and it tells me that row 1, column 10 is now green. Okay, that's beautiful. So all I have to do then is for each cell, we need to create a CSS rule to override the colors. So what we can do is styles plus, and here we will create our CSS rule. So the CSS rule is going to be, we're going to use a tricky CSS shorthand to accomplish this. And I will show you what I'm about to do. How do I select? Here, maybe I'll use the browser built-in developer tools here. So you can see that each cell is TD, and they have a data attribute, right? Data row 1, data column 10. And that's the one we want to change the background color to green, right? So what we can do then is we can do TD data row equals to row data column equals to column. And within here, we're going to add a background color of cell color. Okay. And the reason I'm doing plus or equals is because if you look here, we just have all the styles for all the cells. And for each row and column, we're appending styles for that cell to this style string. So in the end, this style string will have everybody's styles for every single cell. Hope that helps. Okay. So now let me just add a comment here. Construct CSS style rules for each cell. And in the end, we just need to kind of apply these styles to the page, and it should work. So just to make it simple, I'm going to create another tag here called style, and I'm going to have the ID styles. And then all I have to do is document get element by ID styles dot, there's a helper attribute called inner HTML to styles. Okay. This will set the styles for every single cell onto the page, right? So now if I save it and run, my row 1, column 10 is going to be, oh, it's black. Okay, let me change it back to green. Did someone change it for me? All right, let's save it, and it's going to be green. Okay, it didn't work. That's a bummer. So let's take a look at why it didn't work. Live debugging is the best, right? So let's print out styles actually and take a look at what filter around column. Okay, that's a very good catch. Wow. You are good. Thank you so much for saving me there. All right, perfect. So now I have a real-time painting canvas that anybody can visit and paint. All right, so let me just, to demonstrate that it works, I'm just going to change this first cell to red, okay? Row 1, column 1 to red. Once I change it here, it turned red on my canvas, right? It makes it very powerful. And I'm going to send this URL in the chat, and you tell me if it works for you. I recommend using a computer browser, desktop browser, because we are listening to mouse events, mouse enter and mouse down events, instead of like touch events. So now everybody pick a different color of your choice, and you can come in with your art. All right. Whoa. Oh my goodness. So now it's live, right? Everybody can do it at the same time. All right, very cool. Oh my gosh. It's going all over the place. For the purpose of the demo, I'm going to remove the borders. Okay, so that's what it looks like. Looks like we're having a fight there. Oh my gosh. Okay, does anyone have any questions of what we did so far? Bigger? Yes. How do we make it bigger? It's actually extremely simple. Let's make it 30 by 30, for example. But first, let's change the style sheet to make it maybe 15 pixels by 15 pixels. And then we can create a table of 30 by 30. And that's all you need to change. And voila, you can see a much bigger canvas, 30 by 30, and you can still see the changes that everybody has been playing with inside the first 10 by 10. Okay. Show HTML again? Of course. So here's the HTML we have. Just for simplicity, we added a style tag with an ID so that we can easily set styles within. All right, let me join the fun. Let me put yellow. I haven't seen any yellows. We're really stepping on each other. The nice thing about Firebase is it has built-in conflict resolution, so you won't have problems like merge conflicts that you would in Git, like when two people change the same things, right? So Firebase handles all that for you. You don't have to worry about that. But if you want some advanced, like more granular permissions and processes, you can configure that using Firebase as well. So it's very powerful. Is there a way to make painting a little bit smoother? Yes. So I won't get into it too much for this session, but there are a couple ways you can make it a little bit more smoother. First is if you take a look at what we're doing, right? Every time something changes in the database, anytime something changes in the database, we're actually recreating all the styles for all the cells and popping them onto the page. So one optimization you could do is you only append the difference, only append the cells, the colors of the cells that changed, instead of kind of recreating and re-adding all the style rules. So that's the first area that could use some improvements. Another area that could use some improvements is using Canvas, as somebody else suggested, instead of using tables, because there are like overhead when it comes to HTML DOM elements on the page. It comes with overhead, and Canvas can solve that quite nicely. So I hope that helps. But here I'm just trying to kind of give you an idea of how to easily integrate Firebase into a game like this, and everybody in the world can join in and paint at the same time. Okay, scroll up a little bit. Here, maybe I'll zoom out a little bit so that you can see more code. Just maybe maximize your screen. Okay, GitHub repo. I think this project is public on Replit, so you can go ahead and head over there. I'm going to send the link, and you will be able to access the full code that we have. Okay, and then, yes, I just shared it. Perfect. Okay, so this is a little bit of a mess, right? How can I easily clear everything? It's actually rather easy because I have access to the real-time database backend, right? So if I want to wipe out the first row, I can just delete row 1. And if you look on the page, row 1 is gone. While I'm at it, let me change the background color to white as the default background color. And that's it. Okay, so next, I just want to draw our MLH logo onto the page. Maybe you guys can help me. So let me first download this, or actually, I'll just embed this logo into our page. Onto our page here. Let's do this. Width, I'll just make it 400 or something. Okay, MLH, and then we have the brush color. So for I'm going to delete it for a minute. Okay, I'm going to delete the whole database for a minute, and then let's draw the MLH logo together. So one very nice feature about the color selector is there should be like an eyedropper. You can't see it on my screen right now, but I can drag it, or I can move my cursor onto the L and it becomes blue, right? So let's do, I'm gonna do L. If someone can do M and H, I would really appreciate it. And you can always change your color back to white if you want to erase something, okay? L. Okay, we have a H, we have an L. Make sure you use the right color. And you can do that by, in Chrome, I believe. Once you pick the color, you'll see like an eyedropper, and then you can hover over the color that you'd like, and that will give you the exact color. M is a little bit awkward here, so let's see what we can do to make it look a little bit more similar. Let's connect the top section here, maybe. Maybe let's get rid of the, okay. Someone's helping me to fix it, so thanks a lot. All right, sometimes when I drag it, it grabs the canvas for dragging and dropping. Yeah, so you can use some attributes to disable that behavior. It does happen sometimes. I recommend do some Googling on MDN or somewhere. They should have documentation on how to prevent that, prevent something from being dragged unexpectedly. Okay, we really need MLH. Okay, all right. I think we're good. Okay, I don't know what that is, but yeah. But yeah, thank you for anyone who tried to help me out with drawing MLH on the page. Now everyone can have fun and play around. All right, so that concludes my session. Does anybody have any questions on anything we did? Let me know in chat if you had fun or learned something. You are very welcome. Thank you so much for coming and taking part of Global Hack Week. Okay. What are the limitations of free versions of Firebase? It's quite generous. If we look at pricing here, you'll see they have a very generous Spark plan. Well, as I said at the beginning, Firebase is a framework that comes with tons and tons of capabilities, right? So there's A/B testing, analytics, authentication, Firestore, cloud functions, etc. Right? So a lot of them, or each of them, have their own free quotas. So you can take a look. The one that we used specifically was the real-time database, and you can have 100 simultaneous connections, and you can store up to 1 GB of data for free. So that's the limitation for the real-time database. It's a perfect use for prototyping, hackathons, and just having fun. You are so welcome. I'm so glad that you get to play around with newer technologies. That's what we are here for. Learned a lot. Thank you so much for coming. That was a fun and cool project. Yes, indeed. And are there any other options than Firebase? There are. I think there's one called Supabase or something. Let's take a look. Yeah, Supabase. It is an open source Firebase alternative. If you want to check it out, you can host it yourself and enjoy a lot of the similar convenience and ease of use as Firebase. And you can self-host it too. So yeah, one downside for Firebase is there's no self-hosting and you have to use Google Cloud. You are so welcome, and definitely explore this in the future. Perfect. Love it. All right, I'm not seeing any questions. Feel free to drop them before I head out. But here are some key takeaways. During our session, we started with a vanilla plain HTML, JavaScript, and CSS plain files. We started by creating a table, and we use cells in a table to mimic pixels in a canvas drawing. And we set up JavaScript to handle event listeners. We created rows and columns and added event listeners to every cell, so that anytime we move our mouse down or press down on and drag on each cell, the colors will update based on what you have selected inside the brush color input. And after that, we explored Firebase real-time database to see how we can share a single database with everyone across the world using Firebase SDK. It makes it so easy. We don't have to write too much to accomplish a lot. So if we actually count the lines we've written, it's about, from 24 to 87. That's like 60 lines minus the white spaces. I would call that 50 lines, okay? I think we made it, all right? Don't be too harsh on me. So those are the key takeaways. We learned about Firebase, and we got some practice writing JavaScript, CSS, and HTML. And we saw that just with around 50 lines of code, we can accomplish something super easy, super powerful, like this paint together game. Yeah, love it. All right, thank you so much, everybody. Thank you so much for coming to my session. I will join again at the next Global Hack Week, so be sure to check out my session again next time. And with that, the next session we have is within about 25 minutes. Join Kari to learn how you can build games across iOS devices. I've never done that before, so it looks like this is the second part of her Kari's series. So I encourage you to stay and join their session. All right, so that is coming up. Please share my GitHub and LinkedIn. You can check out my GitHub here, and I'm sure you'll be able to find my LinkedIn from there as well. All right, I really appreciate it, everybody. I'm going to turn off the music and enjoy the rest of your day. Have a good night, good afternoon, and good morning, wherever you are. Take care.